Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Services Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile phones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. I'm Councillor Nick Stavrou and I chair this committee. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors seated to my left at the horseshoe table. In the council chamber, Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, our Mayor, Councillor Wes Thompson, Councillor Di Gillies, and on the opposite, sorry, I apologize there, Councillor Wes Gold, Councillor Di Gillies, and on the opposite side of the horseshoe table, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Susan Bigger. I also acknowledge our CEO, Mr. Philip Storer, to my right, and our Coordinator of Governance, Ms. Kristen Ritchie, to my left. There are other officers in attendance tonight, and they will be introduced as they present their reports. The purpose of the Services Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and Council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, we don't have anybody presenting this evening, so we can actually move forward to the next item. But before I do that, this is the first Services Delegated Committee meeting and for the year, so I wish everybody a happy new year. The next item, Ms. Ritchie, are there any apologies?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there is one apology for tonight's meeting, Councillor Victor Franco.
Thank you for that, it's noted. The next item, councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes of the Services Delegated Committee held on the 11th of December 2023. Councillor Gold.
Happy to so move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Gillies.
Seconded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillors, is anyone opposed? There be no opposition. I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Declaration of a conflict of interest. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for the matters in tonight's agenda? There being no conflict of interest, we'll move to the substantive part of the agenda. The first item on the agenda tonight is item 3.1, terms of reference for advisory committees. Tonight we have, I'm waiting and moving too fast, I guess, so sorry, Kate. Thank the officers for coming to the table, and tonight's item will be presented by Ms. Fiona Brown. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, Council has a number of internal and external advisory committees and groups that support councillors in their decision-making, each with its own terms of reference. In 2023, opportunities to update and revise the terms of reference for 3 advisory committees were identified. These are the Boroondara Public Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee, the Boroondara Arts Advisory Committee, and the CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee. The opportunity to update the Boroondara Public Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee terms of reference was raised by councillors who identified that the committee could benefit from having additional community representatives to ensure a diversity of health and wellbeing views and interests in the community are represented. Other councillor feedback identified improvements to procedural matters and phrasing, and these changes are outlined in Table 1 in the report and the updated Attachment 1. The Boroondara Arts Advisory Committee met once in 2023 and councillors were advised that quarterly meetings would resume this year. The revised terms of reference are outlined in Table 2 and in Attachment 2, and they reflect the work of the committee in 2024. The CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee at the council meeting on the 18th of December, officers presented a reviewed and amended CEO Employment and Remuneration Policy for consideration. A key change to the policy was that the committee would become advisory rather than a delegated committee. The new committee will operate as per the developed terms of reference, and that is Attachment 3. These terms of reference for the 3 committees will be shared with members of the relevant advisory committee pending their adoption tonight. So the officer's recommendation is on the screen, and that is that SDC resolve to endorse the terms of reference annexed to this report for the following advisory committees: the Boroondara Public Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee, the Boroondara Arts Advisory Committee, and the CEO Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Brown. There've been no one in the gallery this evening. Councillors, are there any questions? There have been no questions. I understand there's been a circulation this afternoon, and I have Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Regarding the CEO Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee, under section 3, the composition, we're saying that the committee comprises of councillors and an independent advisor. Is that usual that an independent advisor is a member of the committee?
Thank you, Ms Palisades.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's not always the case, but it is recommended, but it's up to council to determine whether that's how they'd like the committee to operate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gillies, was that clear for you?
Yes, thank you. I'm not quite sure that I'm comfortable with the way it's worded in the draft policy, though, to be quite honest. Another question, if I may, Chair?
Absolutely.
We've got in 3.2, officers nominated by the CEO or relevant executive manager. I'm not quite sure how this sits, and I appreciate that I don't have a great deal of experience as opposed to some of my colleagues, but would an officer appointed by the CEO be the right way to function in this capacity, or is it better that the relevant executive officer has that role?
Ms Palisades again.
Again, through you, Chair. It's entirely up to the committee and council how would like the advisory committee to operate, so it doesn't have to be the case if that's what the committee and council decide.
Okay, but if we decide differently to how it's currently worded, would we need to change that tonight in these terms of reference?
We could make an amendment to, I'm looking at my governance colleague here, we could certainly make an amendment to the terms.
Okay, all right, well, let's park that for the moment. If I may, Chair, I've got one more query, if that's all right.
Please.
In 5.2, we've got the wording, most of the information that councillors, members of this committee, will have access to. Shouldn't that be all? And that's about confidentiality. Shouldn't that be all the information regarding the matters?
5.2.
Ms Palisades, is...
Sorry, if I can just clarify through you, Chair. Was the question relating to all information should be confidential that comes to the committee?
That's what I'm suggesting. At the minute, the wording says most of the information should be treated as confidential.
Through you, Chair, if I may answer that question. The definition of confidential information is in the Local Government Act, and there may be some information that is not confidential. For example, the constitution of the advisory committee itself, the names and members of the advisory committee.
Okay, that clarifies that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Gillies' questions, I'm wondering why some of the content in this draft is taking councillors by surprise. Ordinarily, these matters are considered prior to coming for adoption, and certainly the matters raised by Councillor Gillies aren't matters within my memory. Just wondering why that is.
Ms Palisades.
We haven't actually, it's a newly developed draft. We haven't actually spoken directly to council about it. Some of it follows the governance rules and recommendations that have come out of Santon report and how committees have operated, but there is nothing to say that we couldn't have a further conversation with councillors and the committee should they choose to.
Doesn't really go to the nub of why it wasn't discussed prior to coming here in this form for adoption, but anyway.
Councillor Addis.
Thanks very much, Chair. I have probably two questions. I guess because this is something that I've been involved in for a long time, the Public Health Committee, I'm seeking advice about whether the first dot point, whether there would be any problem in splitting it so that we had, I'm doing this from memory, the role of the committee is to consider the broad population as a dot point, and then the role of the committee is to pay special attention to particular groups of people who have greater health issues. I'm just seeking whether there would be a problem in splitting that so there are 2 dot points, not 1.
We can easily do that. And I think you're talking about under number 3, objectives, the first dot point, splitting that. Yes.
Objectives, you're quite right.
Yes,
Thank you.
we can split that, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Addis, you fine with that? Are you finished with your questions?
No, look, I guess echoing what Councillor Park said, I would be interested in us possibly having an opportunity to discuss the third, the CEO Employment Remuneration Advisory Committee separately and then come back to us. And I believe there might have been a motion prepared that would enable us to do that. But if I'm happy, if others are, once the questions are exhausted, I'd be happy to move that, or if somebody else wanted to.
That with the said motion on our screens there.
Yes, so that's divided the 2 and then defer. Can I just check that that would give us an opportunity to discuss? It would, thank you. So that I would be happy to move that, but maybe others have questions.
Noted, Councillor Addis. Have you finished with your questions in this line? Thank you. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I would in essence be happy to second the motion on the screen with one amendment if the mover was willing to consider. In fact, the date in clause 3 of that motion I think is too soon and wouldn't allow for it to come through C, B and D first. So in effect, if we removed the date and deferred it sine die to a date to be set, that may be a better option.
I'm happy with that, subject to whether we need to have it passed, endorsed by a certain date, because I thought there might be a reason why it had to be done by a certain date.
Okay. May I then ask, Ms Pellis, is there any date considerations that we need to be aware of?
There would be a requirement, depending on what council decide, to probably do this sooner rather than later. It might be that council want a little bit more time to deliberate on the terms, but the preference is that it's done obviously sooner rather than later. So if a committee meeting is called, then the terms of reference have been endorsed.
On the basis that the mover is satisfied with what's on the screen, I'm happy to second it.
Chair, if I might just bring up one matter.
Mr. Wee.
I'd just like to advise councillors that we do have a CB&D scheduled for next week, next Monday night.
Well, that sounds like there's a date there.
Yeah, Chair, if I may, I think it's safer to have it without a date. experience indicates that sometimes these things might need to go through more than one C, B and D, and if we lock ourselves into a date, then that just makes it even more awkward. So we all understand that the more timely the matter can come back before us, the better, but it will still give that flexibility to go to a C, B and D.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. I'm in your hands, so if are you comfortable, Councillor Addis?
I think that makes sense, so long as we're all mindful of the desire need to get on with it.
So what I've got now is a mover and a seconder. Is there anybody opposed to what has been put before us? There be no opposition? Oh, Councillor Gold, sorry.
I was just going to back some earlier comments that I had some comments on one of them also, well, the CEO's terms of reference, but I wasn't going to make them tonight. It was going to be referred to.
There's no, this is not the time for comments. So
I'm not making comments.
Oh.
I said I'd support it being, many of the things I would have discussed in this probably are more CB and D type issues.
It is a comment.
So I'd be very happy for it to be
Councillor Gold,
postponed.
it is a comment. Comment's a comment. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Just a question for clarification, whether or not it, dot point 3 should read advisory committee to a future council / special council or delegated committee meeting? No? No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Now, there exhausted any questions? We'll move next to no opposition. I will put the motion to the vote. Councillor Addis, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Only briefly. I think the bit in red makes perfect sense. I think we can hear that people do have some, I guess, some points they'd like to have clarified, and that this probably isn't the right forum to have that sort of discussion, to echo what Councillor Gold was saying, that he has some queries, comments, that it would be very much better for us to have an opportunity to go through them and try and ensure that we have the best possible terms of reference that we're all comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. There be no opposition. Really, I will put the this motion to the vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes for the CEO to join us. The next item on the agenda is item 3.2, proposed removal of reserve status. I do understand there has been some concerns raised with me, and I would put it to councillors whether you would like to have an adjournment motion to consider those issues. Is anybody prepared to move that?
Chair, is it an adjournment that's being sought, or is it just that we move into confidential business?
I think not confidential business, it's an adjournment that's been sought.
All right,
I'm in your hands, Councillor
I'll
Park.
so move then, Chair.
Thank you.
Adjournment.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Seconder? Put it to the vote. Councillor Vigor, sorry.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Vigor. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? So, thank you. The motion's carried. We stand adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody online for this evening. We are resuming our meeting as before. We were on item 3.2, and I seek a motion from a councillor. Councillors, a deferral is potentially the motion. Would you like to have a motion?
Apologies. Thank you. Does everybody, I'm happy to move that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Vigor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sinfield.
Happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Anybody opposed? There be no opposition. I put, Councillor Vigor, would you like to speak to your motion or?
Only to say I think this is the right decision for us to have appropriate time to assess the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vigor. There be no opposition. I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We have actually reached an end in tonight's agenda and would like to look for general business. Councillors, are there any matters of general business? There be no matters of general business. Any urgent business? No urgent business. Any confidential business? There be no confidential business either. We've come to the end of the meeting, but before I close the meeting, I'd like to thank you all who have joined us this evening, and I declare the Services Delegated Committee meeting closed. Thank you.